we live one life. And we should be here to make the most of it, to see what's possible, to push ourselves through the fears and the doubts and the worries and the, people who tell us be realistic and don't do that and don't do that and don't do that. Like, screw all of that. We are here to dream big. We are here to live our biggest and our best lives. Hello. So I'm very excited because a few weeks ago now, we received some amazing news and we got planning permission to build our dream home. And this has been going on for a couple of years now. We bought a plot of land. Well, it had a bungalow on it that was run down, but we bought that in January 2022. We applied for planning permission that year to build our dream home. It got rejected, which was so frustrating, and then we reapplied and we finally got it, and I was so excited. And I want to share a story with you on how I manifested this, and I want to inspire you to dream big and to think about what it is that you want, because I think so often we forget to do it. We forget to dream big. We forget to connect with what it is that we actually want. We forget to actually decide what it is that we want. And so we kind of drift through life feeling a little bit empty and a little bit hazy and all over the place, and then feeling frustrated because we're not really living the lives we want to be living, but we actually don't know what lives we do want to be living. And so it kind of just feels like a bit of a no man's land. And I know I've been there myself, and it can feel frustrating, but so often what really helps me is when I hear other people's stories on how they've manifested things, and it really inspires me, and I love hearing their stories. I get lost in their stories, and it really helps to kind of fire me up and think about what I want. And so that's what I want in this episode. I want to share my story with you on how I manifested this situation with the house, so that it hopefully inspires you to reconnect with your dreams, to dream big, to really visualize what it is that you want. Okay, so here we go. So since I was really little, I always wanted to build my own house. And at nighttime, when I would fall asleep at night, probably from the age of, I don't know exactly how old I was, but maybe as a young teenager, maybe, up until throughout all of the years since then. At night, often what I would do is I would fall asleep visualizing this house, and I'd walk down the driveway, and as I walked down the driveway in my mind, it was a kind of a long driveway, and to the right was land, and then on the driveway there were these old school lampposts, and at the front of the drive was, by the house, was a water feature. And then on the inside of the house, I would basically walk around. I'd walk around the kitchen, I'd walk around the living room, I'd go up the stairs, I'd go into the bedroom, I'd go into the bathrooms. I would go all around the house, and I knew it inside out. As I'm telling you this, I am imagining what that house looked like. I would go in there, I would imagine doing things in the house. I would imagine how the house would feel. I would imagine certain things like where we'd put the Christmas tree. And I vividly visualized this over and over again. My dad always was telling me growing up, Carrie, decide what you want and write it down. And as a teenager, I bought my first goal folder, and it was this black kind of plastic wallet with plastic sheets inside so I could put pieces of paper in there. And so I started to gather together, I suppose, images for what this house would be like. So what the exterior might look like. I gathered images of staircases, of kitchens. I gathered images of a tree house that I wanted to have out in the garden somewhere. And I put them all inside of this goal folder, along with a bottle of perfume of how I wanted my life to smell when I was successful. And I would smell this perfume, and I would have this really strong feeling of just this deep down feeling of I am going to be successful. I am going to create a really successful life. That is the feeling I had when I smelled this perfume. And so the years went by, and I would vividly visualize this. And then aside from that, I remember when I was old enough to drive and I was still at school, I remember driving home, and I would get to this part on the country lanes where I would turn a bend, and I just felt this overwhelming sense that I was home. It felt it was peace washed over me. Obviously, over the years, I've visualized this, and alongside that, built a business and, created a lot of success for myself. And so about 5 or so years ago, we were looking to move house. We started by looking around other houses for sale, because the idea of us being able to build our own home seemed completely far-fetched. It felt unrealistic. So we started to look around houses, and we started with a lower budget, and a lower budget but that felt like a stretch. And so we were looking around, and we went around loads of different houses, and none of them, everything felt like a bit of a compromise. But we kept looking, and the more we looked, the more I kind of expanded what was possible. So we started on one budget, and then the budget kept growing and growing and growing as I started to become more comfortable at the idea of spending more money on a house. And it got to a point where we found this house, and it was this amazing farmhouse in this National Trust land, and it was really beautiful, and we decided we were going to buy it. And so this was like, I think, significantly more expensive than the budget we had originally started out on. So we put a deposit down for this house and secured it, and then it was a farmhouse that's being renovated, so we got to like pick out the paint colours and all that kind of stuff, which was really fun and amazing. But in my mind, I was like, oh, we're not building a house. And there was quite a few compromises, like it didn't come with a lot of land, even though it was set inside of a national trust. So there was land around, but it wasn't our land. There was kind of a few compromises, but we were like, okay, but we're happy. When we bought that house, or when we were in the process of buying it, I remember looking on Rightmove, and this house popped up for sale. It was a knockdown job, and it came with like loads of land. And I said to Kelly, my husband, I was like, oh my gosh, if we weren't buying this farmhouse, we would definitely put an offer in for the piece of land. And I was kind of a bit gutted. Anyway, things were progressing with the farmhouse. We started packing up our house to move. And then I got an email from the people we were buying the farmhouse from, the developers, basically saying that they were going to sell to someone else. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? We'd come out of an 8-week clause where we'd put a deposit down for the farmhouse, but it was that it had to complete within 8 weeks, but it couldn't complete within 8 weeks because there was so many issues. And so then we were outside of that 8-week contract, and so basically they're like, we're going to sell to someone else. And I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely devastated and frustrated because we'd started packing up our house, so we had to pull out of the sale of, the house we were living in. A few months passed by, and then we eventually decided we were going to start looking again. So we were talking to the estate agent, and we went around a few houses, and then he said, Carrie, I'm going to email you a house. I think the buyer is dragging his feet and he's not going to go through with it. So I'm going to send it to you. It's a bit random, but take a look. He sent this email through, and it was the house that I had seen that was for sale a few months earlier when we were buying the farmhouse. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the one that I wanted to buy when we were buying the farmhouse. So we went to look round. As we got there, we went through the gates, and it had like this kind of longish driveway, and to the right was land. Then halfway down the driveway was an old school lamppost, and there in front of the house was a water feature. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like I've been here before. This house came with every single thing that me and Callan had decided we wanted. It came with land, there's a stream that runs through it, there was a huge pond that ran through it, there was outbuildings, it was walking distance to a pub, because of course that's important. And it also happened to be in the location where when I would drive home from school, it was that exact spot where I felt like at peace. And afterwards, we realised that me and my dad had actually, many years earlier, looked round the house next door, and we looked at the land, and my dad had taken pictures. He just found them recently, actually, all the pictures he took, and some of those pictures include the land that we now own. And I was like, this is so weird. And so we ended up obviously putting in an offer, which worked out well because we got it for less than what the person who had originally was buying it had put in, and we got the land. So now we've got the planning permission to build the house there. And I think it's so incredible how it works, like how you can decide that you want something, and you don't know when it's going to happen, and you don't know how it's going to happen. But if you keep the faith and you keep clear on what it is that you want, it's amazing. Like, I really do believe the universe delivers when you have that level of clarity. I remember having a conversation with someone last year, and he told me how somebody had spoken to him and said, what does your ideal day look like? And this guy said, oh, I don't know. And he said, well, then you'll never live it. And so he decided that he was going to get really clear on what his ideal day looked like, what his ideal house looked like. And when he wrote down what his ideal house looked like, I think he came up with like 56 different things that he wanted. He'd never done an exercise like that before. And then not long after that, he ended up buying a house, and it had 55 of the 56 things, or I can't remember what the number was now. And the thing that it didn't have was the sound of flowing water. So he bought a water feature to go in the back garden. And it's so powerful. And the number of times I've had conversations with people who have experienced this very thing, they've got so clear on what it is they've wanted, and they have connected with it, stayed connected with it, they've visualized it, they've experienced it over and over and over again in their mind, and then it's happened, it's come to life. And it's so powerful. Like, we are all like really powerful creators. When we tap into that energy within us, when we tap into the power of the universe, like, it's amazing what we can create, what we can achieve. But so often we hold ourselves back. We don't let ourselves go there. We don't let ourselves dream. We don't let ourselves get clear on what it is we want. We stay in this muddled place where we're not really too sure what it is that we want. We don't really fully know where it is we're trying to get to. We don't really know what our ideal day looks like. We don't really know what ideal week or ideal month or ideal year looks like. We don't even know what living the dream even means. We don't know how to live the dream. Some of us might know a few bits, but don't actually really fully know what the dream life looks like for ourselves. We don't know. Sometimes it's a version of what we think it should be, but that's not actually it. And so few people actually take the time to figure out, what is it? What is it for me? What does it mean? What does it look like? And I think on top of all of that, we often get really confused with this feeling that we don't need it. I remember when I was hosting the Business Dream Life activation, and I was running through with my brother what I was going to be going through in the live session. And one of the questions I was asking people was something around like, what would you do if you had £1 million, $1 million? And I remember asking James, like, imagine having $1 million sat in the bank account. And he was like, we don't need $1 million. And I was like, yeah, but imagine if you did, what would you do with it? And then he was like, okay, well, I guess I would buy a piece of land that was big enough for me to have rescue dogs. And I was like, amazing. And then all of a sudden he started coming up with this whole list of things that he would want if he had $1 million. But he also had this belief that he didn't need $1 million. He was like, I'm okay with what I've got. And a part of me feels like it's not that we shouldn't be okay with what we've got, but where does the belief come from? The feeling that we don't need more. Like, is it a really helpful thought and feeling for us to have? Or is it a limiting belief that is actually stemming from this feeling that we don't want to be greedy? I don't need that. I don't need it. And so therefore I shouldn't have it. I shouldn't have more. I shouldn't have an abundance of things. I really love this, and I love this conversation, because I think if we can come back to this conversation more with ourselves, if we can keep cracking ourselves open a little bit on this, on like, what is abundance? What is success? What do we want? What is the dream life? Does our dream house look like? What does our dream week look like? What does our dream year look like? And we get clearer and clearer on that, and we keep that conversation going with ourselves, our lives are going to radically transform, and we'll make the most of it. Because the thing is, like, we live one life, and we should be here to make the most of it, to see what's possible, to push ourselves, through the fears and the doubts and the worries and the, people who tell us be realistic and don't do that and don't do that and don't do that. Like, screw all of that. We are here to dream big. We are here to live our biggest and our best lives. And I think that we all have the opportunity to do it. But so many of us don't actually focus any of our time and energy on it. We don't spend hardly any time on dreaming, because it feels like maybe for some of us, like, it's a waste of time. Like, how many times in school did you get told off for daydreaming? Like, so many of us have an association that daydreaming is a waste of time. It is not a waste of time. It is a huge part of the manifestation process. Like, the whole thing, ask and you shall receive. You've got to decide what it is you want to ask for if you want to receive it. But most of us don't know what to ask for, therefore we don't receive it. So I'm saying to you, get clear on what it is you want to ask for. Maybe it's starting with, what is your dream house and what does it look like? For me, like, there's so many features of that dream house when I was a kid, like visualizing going around it, that I have now put into the actual real plans of the house that we've drawn up. And it's been such a journey to get to this point. Like, and there's been so many ups and downs along the way, and I'm sure there'll be more ups and downs along the way. And it's flipping scary as hell. Like, I feel scared. I'm terrified. Like, it's a scary thing, and going after your dreams can be scary and overwhelming and daunting, and so much fear bubbles up, but it's also fun and exhilarating. And you think like, oh, what's possible? And I just think life is so magical when we decide for it to be magical, and we let ourselves play and explore and dream big. So I really wanted to share this with you. I mean, I'm still on this journey with the dream house. Like, it's not actually built yet, so I've got a way to go still. But it just blows my mind when I think of that house and that land, and the fact that the farmhouse had to fall through, and the exact property that I'd seen that I liked came back up quietly, and that it had the old school lamppost, it had the water feature, it had the land to the right hand side of the driveway, it had the drive in the same position, like in the same way, it has the water feature, like the water on the land, it is walking distance from the pub, like checks all the boxes. And sometimes I just feel like we have to trust the universe to deliver for us. But it can only deliver what we tell it we want. And that is the problem. Most people don't know how to tell it what they want. And it's so simple. Start with a pen and a piece of paper and your own thoughts and writing down what you might like. That's it. That's where you start. And you have fun with this. And dream big and play with it. Like, if you haven't got our dream book in our Carrie & Co collection, go and grab one. And like, yes, I know it's a pretty book and it might intimidate you to write in it, but be messy with this. These are your dreams. Write in it. Go through the dreaming process. Define what you want and track those dreams, because I'm telling you, if you get them down on paper, the chances of them happening have just gone through the roof. So have fun with it. I'll leave a link below for you to get the dream book if you want, and I'll put a little discount code in there as well that you can use to save something, just so you can go get it, go grab it, go dream big and have fun exploring the possibilities. I love it. It's so powerful. So I really hope this has inspired you and fired you up. And I would love it if you can share your manifesting stories with me. Email them in, tag me on Instagram, or send me a DM on Instagram at I am Carrie Green, and share your manifesting stories with me. We can just look at them together, or I can, reshare them on here, and just like, not necessarily with your name, but just to inspire other people and to show people what is possible. So definitely do that, because I would love, love, love to hear from you. Dream big, go enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next time for another episode of the She Means Business Show.